political systems of this world have constantly been changing. The change started in Europe and gradually took over the whole world. But we see that the change which took place in the past in Europe is pretty same as the change that takes place right now in the Middle East. But we see that change takes its time and takes place only gradually. The evolvement from a monarchy to a democracy goes over various steps. Some countries now are still monarchies, some are complete democracies, and some are something in between. I will give you an overview over the 6 different systems which are most common in nations nowadays. It all started with the absolute monarchy. This is the system which was used in the Middle Ages of Europe and which is used in some countries of the Middle East still today. In this system, the king is both the mightiest person in the country and the head of the government. As you can see here, it is linked. He has the absolute power and the people cannot decide on anything. Almost every country was once an absolute monarchy, even though we need to say that Greece and Rome, for example, had democracies but then were turned back into absolute monarchies. So around 1500 in Europe, every country was an absolute monarchy, which was the time of imperialism and colonialism and things like that. The next system which evolved was the constitutional monarchy. It was the system which was used in Europe at the time of the First World War. The king is still the mightiest person in the country, but the government is led by a premier minister. Additionally, there is a parliament which decides who should be the premier minister, or which at least gives the premier minister his powers, even if he is decided by the king. So this was, for example, Germany in the First World War and England, and nowadays it would be, for example, Kuwait or Morocco. The grade of democracy in this system can vary, of course. So the more power the Premier Minister has and the more independent the parliament is, the less mighty is the king. So it can be more or less a good democracy. The latest of the monarchies is the parliamentary constitutional monarchy. In this system, all of the power lies with the parliament. The parliament decides who will be the premier minister and therefore who will be part of the government. The king is still there, but he is not the mightiest person. He is just ceremonial. In the case of England, the Queen, of course, she is only there to attract tourists or something like that. There are many constitutional parliamentary monarchies in the world today, mainly part of the Commonwealth, like England, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and countries like that, but also independent parliamentary constitutional monarchies like Sweden and Spain, for example. So the other set of systems we have today are the republics. Republic, this comes from res publicas, so the reign of the people, approximately. This means that it is a completely democratic system and not a monarchy like here. So what is interesting if we look at the republics is that each of the systems I will show you almost exactly mirrors one of the systems of monarchies we have. The first system is the presidential republic. In this system, the king is just exchanged by the president. Of course, the president is elected and the post is not inherited, but they're still pretty equal or pretty similar, because the president is both the most powerful person, the mightiest person in the country, and the leader of the government, like you can see here. Additionally, there is a parliament, but this parliament does not have so much rights. It cannot decide who will be part of the government, because that's one of the duties of the president. And if it contradicts the president, he usually can veto the parliament, and to undo such a veto, the parliament needs, in some cases at least, 2/3 of a majority. So the president really has the most powers in this system. Examples for this system are the USA and some countries in Africa. This system evolved mainly because a strong leader of the nation was needed. So if we just replace the king by a president, it will be a democracy, but the nation will still have a strong leader. In our next republican system, the power lies more on the parliament, but not solely. So in this system, both the president and the parliament are elected by the people, just as in this system above. But the government is not decided by the president, but by the parliament. You see, it is a mirroring of this system. So here the king still has some powers and is the mightiest person in the country. Here the president is actually the mightiest person in the country, but the Premier Minister is the leader of the government. Of course, this can again vary a bit, so in some of the systems the Premier Minister has more powers and in some the President has more powers, but generally the President is mightier as the Premier Minister, but he is not the only mighty person in the country. This system is mainly used by France and former French territories like Algeria and other northern African nations, and it is also used in Russia. So you can see the position of the president in the presidential republic in this system is divided between the president and the prime minister. So the prime minister also has his rights, his duties, and is the actual leader of the government. The last system is the parliamentary republic. In this system, again, like in the parliamentary constitutional monarchy, all of the power lies with the parliament. There is still a president elected, just as the king here still exists and inherits its position. But the president does not have more than just ceremonial powers. So actually none. He cannot decide something, he should not even influence the public opinion. He should not say anything, basically. He is just there to take part in ceremonies. So the parliament here decides on who will be the Premier Minister. The Premier Minister then rules the country and is the leader of the government. This system is mainly spread in Europe, for example in Germany, where the Premier Minister is the Chancellor, but also in Eastern Europe like Poland, for example. It is very similar to this system, even more than those systems are, because the president and the king both have only ceremonial powers, and this here is exactly the same. So the Premier Minister here and the Premier Minister here, they both have exactly the same rights, while here and here the rights are still a bit different. Now we can see how the evolvement of the systems in history took place. First, it was the absolute monarchy, which later became the constitutional monarchy, and later the parliamentary constitutional monarchy, or it went directly from the absolute monarchy to the presidential republic, and then downwards here. Of course, it could also have become from this to this, or even from this to this. So, in the end, we can say that those four systems are democratic systems in most cases. But the presidential republic has a very high risk to be misused. So, especially in third world or developing countries, when the president is elected, he basically becomes the king in this system, because he can have the absolute powers, and then for his term, like 4 or 5 or 6 years maybe even, he just works as king, and then at the next election he can manipulate them in a way that he will stay in office. So it is not guaranteed that this system is truly democratic, but neither is it with all of the other systems. So every of these systems can be misused. Of course, there are also different systems that are not included in this overview. For example, the one-party system, which is present in communist states, and in other systems like in Switzerland, where I live, where the supreme position, so the highest power, is not held by just one person but by 7 people, so they share all the powers and are at the same time the mightiest people in the country and the leaders of the government and the government at the same time. So yeah. But there are also other systems which cannot be included in this overview, but you can see how related those systems all are. And I think it is important to see that this development could take place, and that finally some countries nowadays are still monarchies, but how these monarchies could become to truly democratic systems. Yeah, that was it. Thank you very much for watching, and if you liked it, subscribe. And as you can hear, and as I already said, I'm from Switzerland. English is not my maternal language, but I'm trying to learn it, and I hope I will get better in a few years. We'll see. So, thank you for watching.